Hi, everyone. I'm Wendy Tyrrell. I am the Managing Director of the Longview Consulting, and I am really delighted to be here at the LIAMforum 2023 and to have this conversation about networking, connecting, and onboarding. And for those of you, particularly young people who are interested in the resources sector, this is going to be a great opportunity to learn from some people who have already learned a great deal about networking and connecting. And I think networking and connecting have the power to change the world. And I think Caelen and Tanvi are going to give us some stories about how they are changing the world through networking and connecting. And I think we are also going to have Lucy Lyons join us and possibly Josh Hanna as well. So let's dive in, shall we? I want to start with Caelen. If you'd like to just share a little bit about who you are and what you're passionate about in the context of this conversation.
Yeah, well, first, thank you, Wendy, for having me on the panel, and thank you to the organizers for LIAMforum for hosting this great event. I've been watching several sessions this week, and they've all been absolutely excellent. So it seems like it's doing a lot to really, help promote the mining industry to young people. I'm really proud to be a part of this. And so, kind of go a little bit of background of who I am. So I'm a Caelen Burand. I'm the founder and director of Young Mining Professionals Arizona. And what that is in simple terms is it's an international group that's focused on helping young mining professionals find their network, advance their career, and learn new skills that are going to help advance mining. In my technical work, I also work as a consultant, a mining engineer and geologist, focusing on artisanal small-scale mining and geometallurgy. Yeah. So thank you again for having me.
And tell us about, Caelen, tell us about why you're passionate about networking, connecting.
Yeah, so I'm incredibly passionate about networking, connecting young professionals, particularly because I think that for all of us as we're entering the industry, for us to be able to really achieve our goals, to reach our dreams and have a really fulfilling career, the way to do that, the way to access that is going to be through networking. Because those experiences are going to allow us to be able to meet the people that are going to help us gain the skills and gain the connections necessary in order to move up the ladder and really achieve those big ambitions that we have.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Caelen. And now to the wonderful Tanvi Sheth. Tanvi, give us a little background about you and also why you're passionate about networking and connecting.
Yeah, for sure. So first up, thank you so much, Wendy, for having me on this panel. Super grateful for this opportunity, and I can't wait to see where this conversation heads. But hi, everyone. My name is Tanvi. I am 17 years old, and I am a high school student from Ontario, Canada. So the past year and a bit has been full of exposing myself to the emerging technologies industry and really just challenging myself to open as many doors as possible, but at a young age. So for a large chunk of time, I exposed myself to the blockchain industry, and my priority was building full stack decentralized applications and really honing my programming skills and getting technical at a young age, just putting myself at an advantage. And recently I've moved into the artificial intelligence sector, specifically in natural language processing. And I'm also working on a really cool project within biodiversity conservation, where I am intersecting CNNs, which is a type of AI model, with bioacoustics, so animal sounds in the environment. And I'm using it to further strengthen our conservation efforts and monitor biodiversity, specifically in deep sea oceans and also my local Canadian regions around me. But in short, I've just been trying to work on things and finding opportunities that kind of forced me to get real feedback from industry professionals, gain valuable mentorships. And those are all parts of networking. But I think the biggest thing is also updating the right and relevant people on the projects that I'm working on and the skills that I'm building. which I think is the most important thing as a young person that wants to set foot into the real world. So I'm excited to share more about my experiences and really talk about how valuable networking has been for me as a young person through trial and error and lots of failure, but I'm glad that I can share my journey with everyone.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tanvi. Tanvi, I'll ask you a question about, can you please share your experience that you told us about with regard to Elevate and then Villars and what you've learned from those experiences?
Yeah, for sure. So I was talking to Caelen and Wendy about this during our prep panel, but one of my first networking experiences was actually back in October, so exactly last year. And I met a woman named Ashley Wright, who was actually a very influential woman in Web3 in the Toronto community. And I decided to stay connected with her. I added her to my monthly newsletter, which is something that I've been very consistent with, and just made sure that she was updated on my growing passion for blockchain and the passion that I have for the industry. And then I also decided to stay connected to another wonderful woman named Tara David, who is or was the Web3 lead at Deloitte Canada. And I asked her for a lot of mentorship and advice, and I do believe I made a genuine connection with her. But it turns out that they actually worked together to run the largest woman in Web3 community in North America called Crypto Babes. And because of the long-term relationships that I cultivated with them, I was actually able to join them as the youngest member of this team, of this incredible organization. And I eventually started attending their monthly meetups, and to no surprise, I connected to a lot of the major startups and organizations in Web3 in Toronto. And really the benefit here was when I was looking for an internship this summer, I was easily able to reach out to these startups and using warm introductions from industry leaders that I had gotten so close to. So I did put in the effort early on, even though I had very limited knowledge and technical expertise, which was very intimidating and scary. But when I was ready with the right skills, I was able to leverage these connections and the relationships that I made with these people. So I think the really important thing here is like showing your progress and your growth and just your commitment. And that's really what quote unquote successful people do look for. They just want to see that you're trying and you're progressing. And eventually all that early on effort did reap its benefits. So that's an interesting story that I like telling people.
That's a fantastic story of progress and contribution already. Caelen, turning to you now, can you give us an example of your journey, a story about your journey so far?
Yeah, definitely. So honestly, I think the best emblem of how I've learned to network was actually when starting Young Mining Professionals Arizona. So at the time I was 18 and I was just starting college at the time, and I saw an opportunity to be able to really work with a lot of young mining professionals, and saw that this community hasn't been well developed within the US. And I had been aware of the broader Young Mining Professionals organization. As an international group, I was keenly aware of what they were doing. So at that time, though, being an 18-year-old, it was difficult to get entry. And so kind of like what Tanvi said, I was persistent in trying to network with the different leaders of our group and be able to convince them that it was worth investing their time and energy in helping me start the Young Mining Professionals chapter here in the US. And that was really rewarding for me. That was a difficult experience, but I've learned several lessons on how to talk with people, how to work with people, how to lead people, and how to bring them together to have a successful organization. And to me, it's been really a basis of a lot of the other organizations and groups that I now help work with and help lead.
And you said you saw an opportunity to create Young Mining Professionals. Why did you take that opportunity? Why you? Why Caelen?
That's a good question. I don't think anyone has asked me that question before. I'm not sure if I have a good answer either. I guess my main thinking would be like, why not me? The worst outcome of that experience would have been I failed and nothing much would have happened. I would have lost some time and energy, but besides that time loss, there was very little for me to lose. And at the time, being 18, my opportunity cost for that time was also very low. It was probably basically just studying calculus or studying some engineering stuff. And so the opportunity cost was low, the risk was low. And so it really came down to like, why not me? Why not try it?
That's a great answer. Thank you. So for the audience, if you could just explain how many people you've got as part of Young Mining Professionals.
Yeah, so the international organization, we're over 12,000 members, which is quite rewarding. And that international membership spans all the continents besides Antarctica and Africa. And locally here in the US, we're over 800 members. In the Arizona region, which is the oldest chapter, is the first US chapter and the one I'm associated with. We have about 700 members. And then we recently opened up a new chapter in Denver, which is at about 200.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So before we go, for the audience, you'll need to say how people can join.
Yes.
We'll do that towards the end, don't forget. And for the audience, also, please put your questions into the Q&A, and we'll be really interested to see what you want to hear from Tanvi and Caelen. So we've talked a little about how networking, connecting are important for your careers and for the development of your careers and also your ideas and your work. I am also interested in how networking, connecting are changing the trajectory of your future. What have been the benefits to your work? So if you could just dive a little bit more deeply into that, and I'll ask Tanvi first.
Yeah, for sure. So I'd love to actually share another one of my stories. I think you mentioned the Villars story, and I think that experience itself has drastically changed the trajectory of what I'm working on now. So I can speak on behalf of a lot of younger people who I think can really leverage their age when it comes to networking and connecting. So because of my content updates on LinkedIn and social media and my newsletters also, I was selected to go to Villars, which is a sustainability symposium in Switzerland. So I was one of 8 fellows from this organization called TKS. And the opportunities there really hit me in the face. So for a week straight, I was having breakfast, lunch, dinner with top leaders at CERN, World Economic Forum, Nobel Prize winners. So I also got the amazing opportunity to visit some of their headquarters in Geneva as well. But I was faced with a lot of exposure all at once, and it was definitely a really big learning curve. And I think my biggest experience there was learning how to be intentional with my conversations. So when you go up to someone that you know you can learn so much from, you have to ask yourself, what value are you expecting? Or as a young person, what is your specific ask or goal with this conversation? So as I said before, I'm working on a project within biodiversity conservation, which was definitely very relevant at that conference, and the topic of conversation came up a lot. So 1, that showed my credibility, of course, and 2, my eagerness, since I've already taken action on my interest and my curiosity. So I think a tip that really changed this trajectory for this experience was my specificity. So I proved that it was kind of worth having conversation with me, and the advice that they would be giving is actually going to help me. So that makes them feel good, makes them feel important as well. So that was definitely an experience that gave me a lot of connections, especially support for my project. I'm now working with a World Economic Forum backed startup called StreamOcean, who's working on similar technology and projects. And I'm also getting really good and valuable mentorship from a professor at MIT with my artificial intelligence side, the technical side. So I'm glad that I had a really specific ask at this conference, because I got exactly what I wanted out of it. And I think that's what's most important. And just as a tip, I think the best conversations I had was like 20% talking, 80% listening. So it's really important when you are listening. And the only times I really talked was just to ask specific follow-up questions based on what they said. So people love talking about themselves, their passions, what they're excited about. So I feel like if you allow them to do so, you'll probably get more and learn from them more. So the point is to learn, not to brag about yourself. But yeah, that's another story.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Tanvi. 80% listening, people. Okay, Caelen, tell us about, give us an example from your perspective, please.
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that most of the work I do now is based off of networking. So I mentioned that I do a lot of work in consulting with artisanal small scale mining. And so to quickly define what that means is that instead of working with a lot of the larger industrial mines, which I've worked with in the past, now a lot of my focus is on the miners that don't have all the industrial practices, they don't have all the technologies that a lot of the larger miners do. And this group includes tens of millions of people across the globe. And so to get into that sector was difficult, and it took networking to figure out who was interested in these miners' success, who was interested in their well-being. And it also took networking for them to trust an American to go international to Africa and South America to work with these miners and really improve their practices. And so I would say most of what I'm doing right now is due to networking, and it's been incredibly rewarding. I've been able to have some amazing experiences that I know are going to change my life, and it's all due to my passion for networking.
How did you make those connections, Caelen?
I would say in many ways it was similar to how I started Young Mining Professionals Arizona. That I saw organizations doing work in this area. I knew I wanted to do work in this area, and so I would send emails, call, text, do whatever. Try getting a conversation with them. And then, as Tanvi said, when I had that conversation, I was very specific in the types of questions I asked. I knew what I wanted to get out of the conversation. Asked them a lot about their experiences, basically trying to show that I was interested in what they're doing. I was interested in helping them.
Fantastic. Show that you're interested in helping. So some great advice there from Tanvi and Caelen in terms of being very specific about what your ask is and what you're looking for, what you're interested in, and then spending a lot of time listening and learning from others about what's important for them and tailoring your questions accordingly. Tanvi, did you want to add to that?
No.
Okay. I do. One quick thing, if I can add, Wendy. I talk with a lot of young professionals who don't feel like they can ask specific questions. And I just want to mention that a specific question can be broad, like, what do you do? Why do you enjoy it? And so it can be more exploratory, and that can be the specific purpose, is to understand in a broad sense what they're doing. I just don't want to give off the impression that you need to know exactly what you want and exactly what your future plans are, because oftentimes those are very hard to determine.
Yeah, I actually want to add on to that, just for I think when you do ask questions, like as Caelen said, it's not specific in regards to what type of information you want back, but just being mindful of when you're asking them, how much can they actually answer? Like, how much content would they have to tell you? So the more information you can get out of them, the better, because the longer the conversation is, the higher the possibility is that it'll be valuable. So just making sure they're not yes or no questions, and they actually have to think for themselves before answering, to make sure that the value that they're giving you is something that will help me or help you.
Love it. That's beautiful, because it's really about building relationships, isn't it? And deepening understanding of one another and what's important for you and for them, and being able to find those common points of connection. If there are people who are watching and listening who may be afraid or very reserved, or like me tend to be introverted, what advice would you have for them from your own experience? Can you share some advice based on your own stories?
Would you like me to start?
Yeah, go for it, Caelen.
Okay. So, I do interact with a lot of introverts, a lot of engineers and scientists that typically I find can have trouble with these types of situations. And I don't know if I have a solution to maybe the anxiety or some of the fears that arise, but I like to tell people and kind of lead them through the thought process of, like, what's the absolute worst that can happen if you do have a conversation. Because I think that a lot of times we can inflate our worries and inflate our concerns, but in reality, a lot of times when having a conversation, the absolute worst thing that can happen is that somebody walks away or the conversation ends, and the outcome of that is not terrible. It doesn't, there's no long-term ramifications of that. And I think for people who are nervous about having those conversations, that having that internal dialogue, going through that thought process of what's the absolute worst that can happen in this situation, and understanding that it might not be that bad and there are ways around it, can be very helpful.
Love it. Thank you, Caelen. Tanvi, do you have anything that you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I think I just add on to Caelen. So just like the fears or the anxiety that people have, I think most of it is because they haven't confronted them or they haven't experienced it first. So I think like I've only experienced networking, or I've gotten started only for a year, but I think the best advice would just be practice and iterating, because like Caelen said, your first one will probably suck. Like it'll probably last 3 seconds, but that's just kind of what you feed off of. And as Wendy did say, having small talk is not the worst thing either, because that's where you can find similarities and common ground that you can feed off of. And then from there, you can get deeper with your conversations and actually ask for their authentic thoughts and ideas. So I like to do this thing where I like mentally tell myself I'm going to talk to 25 people or 50 people. Does not matter how long the conversation lasts, but just when I'm at an event, just go and talk, because the more you talk, the more you'll be able to pick up on cues and how people react to things that you say, and then you can change your questions accordingly, or change your responses accordingly, and eventually you'll find a way to get them to transparently talk to you just how you want to transparently talk to them. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. I'm going to turn now to a question of what you would like to see from people in the resources sector in terms of helping young people creating the right conditions that enable building networks and connections that enable young people to really take advantage of the fantastic resources that are out in the world, and to be able to accelerate and develop their careers. What would you like to see? What would be helpful for you?
So I'll start off. First, I'll be a bit selfish, and I think that they should all support young mind professionals, because kind of, it's my responsibility to make sure that we do well. But outside of that, more seriously, I think that honestly that the mineral resources sector, they've been doing a lot of really good work in helping involve young people and helping them grow their network. I know that there's a lot of the larger companies have started creating internal networks of their employees and helping them build bridges across different disciplines, connecting their engineers, geologists to communications. And I think that is really helpful. There's also many mineral resources companies that are working on graduate programs that are helping students continue to grow their knowledge as they move on in the company. And so I don't have much to add on to what I think they can be doing. But one thing I do think that I would like to see moving forward is having companies increase their transparency between different groups and the young people in their companies. And the reason why is because I think that particularly within mineral resources, we don't have great competition between companies. And so we can only benefit by learning from other groups. And so how I would imagine this working in real life is increasing the amount of basically employee transfers between companies, increasing the amount of talks and opportunities for employees to visit other sites, other mines, other parts of the world. And I think that would help the whole mineral industry sector, not only to attract talent, but also to allow them to have new and enriching experiences that's going to make them the absolute best people for their company.
I love that. And Caelen, I've been working in mining for more than 30 years, and I've had the wonderful opportunity to work in many different parts of the world. And so much of that has been about building relationships and building communities of people across the world through different companies and different organizations, through for-profit and non-for-profit organizations. So I wholeheartedly support those ideas. Tanvi, from your perspective, what would you like to see? And for you, I think, don't confine yourself to thinking about the resources sector. There's also agriculture and forestry, so not just mining, more broadly, resources sector. What would you like to see to, and you're at a different, earlier stage in your career, you've already done amazing things as a school student. What would you like to see in terms of building the right kind of conditions to support young people?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I can speak to a specific industry, as you said, because I have not committed to one or dedicated myself to one yet. But I think regardless of industry, I would really value events and organizations that are dedicated for youth to collaborate with industry professionals. So instead of conferences or meetups that where youth are sort of competing to make these connections with other more experienced people, I'd really appreciate something more dedicated to us so that we can practice and get equal opportunity to make connections. And then from there, I would appreciate that regardless of industry. So just giving priority to youth and dedicated opportunities towards youth, especially within the conservation sector. There are a lot of experienced in terms of like on the technological side as well as in the science side. And it's really intimidating talking to these PhDs and these higher professionals. So if there are platforms where I can openly express my curiosity and express my passion without competing with, I guess, other more experienced people, I would probably get more value from that.
What sort of platforms do you mean?
Yeah, so actually, for example, I'm going to this award ceremony in Toronto, and it is for the potential nominees for the Nobel laureates next year, but from Canada. And what they're doing is they're having a youth luncheon right before the awards. So that's dedicated just for youth to ask questions about the projects. And these nominees are more within the natural sciences and environmental sciences sector. So I'm really excited to go there because I know I'll get the entire opportunity to discuss the projects and ask them for help before the award ceremony starts. And I think just something a bit more dedicated to us would open up more opportunities for me.
That's wonderful. And for our resource sectors to have to create opportunities to connect with young people who have such clarity about what you want to see in the future and such wonderful ideas about how we can take the future forward. There's enormous value for both young people, but also for our sectors in hearing what young people have to say and what you have to contribute. So yeah, that sounds wonderful. Turning now to a question of, what do you think we still have to learn about networking and connecting? And if you could base this on your own experience, so from your own personal perspective, what do you think you still have to learn? And then more broadly, what do you think the world has to learn about networking and connecting? So there's really two questions in one there. So who wants to have a go at that? Go on, Caelen.
Okay.
And just before Caelen answers, audience, we'd love you to ask some questions as well. So please put them into the chat.
So I'll start off with what I personally want to learn how to do better. And I think for me, something that I would definitely like to see myself doing better is being more focused in terms of what I want out of a conversation, as well as being more focused in leading the conversation down a certain path. I know personally for me, a lot of times I get very interested in maintaining a conversation with a person, and sometimes that means that I can lose some of the information that I gather from that conversation, or I lose like action items at the end of the conversation. And so for me, learning how to maintain that balance of being interactive, being someone that's nice to talk to, while also being able to take away a lot of those action items and things I need to work on after the conversation, for me is something I still have not learned how to do and would like to. More broadly, I think that one's harder. I think that we can work on understanding the value of networking within a company space, for example, and understanding the value of building those relationships, because I don't think that it's going to be easy to figure out how that translates into performance, production, or whatever other metric you want to use. But I think we all know that having a good network, having a good community does translate into having a better company, and understanding the importance of networking within a company and understanding how to translate that into whatever the metric is that you want to use to value your company, I think is something that we don't know how to do well, and it's something I would like to see in the future.
Fabulous. So some really interesting insights there, both personally. I love your insight about the balance between maintaining a conversation and drawing out actions and the value of that. And secondly, your thoughts about more deeply understanding the value of networking at a company level and at a sector level. Yeah, both really valuable insights. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Tanvi, what about your thoughts on from a personal perspective, and then what does the world have to learn? First, for you as a young person at school, what does the world have to learn about networking, connecting?
Definitely. Yeah. So I can start off personally. I think something that I definitely need to learn when it comes to networking is how to leave a long-lasting impact on people. So again, as Caelen said, sometimes I'm carried away with, making sure I ask all the questions that I have in my mind, making sure, I get what I want out of it. But I need to understand how am I different from other people, finding my niche so that I can leverage that in conversations, and then potentially, at the end of the day, change that person's day or give them unique insight that others cannot. So just understanding how I'm valuable to them and not just how they're valuable to me. And I think that'll come as I practice more and iterate, but I'm looking forward to seeing how I end up leaving impacts on other people during conversations. And when it comes to how the world needs to change their thinking about networking, I think we should really incorporate the idea of intergenerational networking and opportunities. So we are networking at a global level now, given the technology that we can leverage, but that also means that we can also connect generations within conversations as well, using the same technology. So for example, at Villars, they put a lot of emphasis on this intergenerational networking and ideating. So everyone was in one room, regardless of age, regardless of where they came from, and everyone was sharing their ideas. So I think that is something that will keep all industries, regardless of what they are, updated and filled with fresh perspectives, and also enables youth to set their foot into the world, even if they are in school, but also start contributing to ideas and contributing to industries even before they commit to a single one or get access to these opportunities only through a company. So I think just as a community, as a global community, we should introduce just more intergenerational conversations. Yeah.
You heard it here first, people. Intergenerational networking and connecting. I love that, because there's so much value in bringing diversity of thought to the table, isn't there? And it sounds like that was your experience in Villars. And I'd love you to share, Tanvi, a really specific takeaway that you've had from that intergenerational experience that you had.
Yeah, definitely. I think that week that I was at the conference, I recognized a couple things. One is that these industry professionals, these top leaders in the world, they're actually looking for youth perspectives and for fresh perspectives, because they're surrounded by people that think just like them. They're like-minded, and for the people who are ambitious and innovative and want to keep accelerating their career, they want new perspectives from youth. So they actually look forward to this. So not only is it beneficial for them, but of course, it was really, really beneficial for me, because I was getting insights and learning from people who have been in the industry for years and for decades. So I remember this one night we were all talking around like the lounge area, and we were talking until 3 a.m. But it was just me and a friend with another like 40, 50-year-old people. But we just connected at a personal level, and we were talking not only about the world and the problems that we're trying to solve, but also what's going on at their companies and how they're leveraging emerging technologies and how we think about that. So I truly do think that it's beneficial for both ways, and this experience definitely proved that, and proves that it does work. And introducing it at a mass level would be very beneficial.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tanvi. Is there anything you would like to add to that, Caelen, hearing that story from Tanvi?
Not particularly. I mean, I think that's an amazing experience. And I jotted down a note that I think that young mind professionals needs to start advertising some intergenerational networking, but no new insights on my side. Okay,
lovely. So we've got a couple of audience questions. People, please keep them coming. So are there any resources to learn how to network better? For example, has anyone suggested or do you have suggestions of seminars or a course on the subject, either at school or college, for people who might be interested in learning more about how to network and how to connect? Are there any resources that come to mind that you're aware of?
I cannot think of any off the top of my head.
Let me ask a slightly different question then. What would you like to see? What kind of resources could be helpful?
Tanvi, do you have any thoughts on this?
I was actually going to say, I personally have not used any resources like of that kind. I think, like I said before, the best thing is just going and practicing and iterating. So I guess the advice would be finding opportunities near you and using them as leveraging them to start honing the networking skills. But I have not come across any resources specifically for that I have used. the only way that I've improved is just through practice. So that's all I can say. Yeah.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because I really do see, and from my own experience, that networking, connecting is so fundamental, so vital to being able to change the world and to be able to do the work that we want to do. And yet there aren't resources available. So there's a fantastic opportunity there. And perhaps there's an assumption that we'll know how to go about it. And that's why I do see this kind of panel as being really important, because it's sharing your experiences from your own perspective. And it also highlights that for many others out there who are probably thinking, what do I do? There could be value in creating some resources. I have another question from the audience. Thank you. Could you please talk about how you use social media such as LinkedIn for networking? When and why did you start using it? And what advice would you have to someone who's maybe just starting to use social media for, and particularly LinkedIn?
Tanvi, I think you're more active than I am.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think LinkedIn is a very, very powerful tool. It's one of the only platforms where you can connect to anyone at any institution, any company, no matter what level they're at. So I think for me, I've leveraged social media a lot to get mentorship and to get real world feedback from people that are working exactly what I'm doing, but just at, they're like 10 steps ahead of me. So personally, I decided to start a monthly newsletter. And of course, this does not apply to everyone, but if you're working on a project or you're discovering, or you're just researching or learning about a new concept, you can update your network on the new things that you learned, the new skills that you're building. And this is a great way for people to gauge how dedicated you are, how passionate you are about something. And then eventually that builds your credibility. And when you do need them, and when you do want to use your network and leverage it, they have a reason to help you out, and they have a reason to give you the feedback and give you the help. So as a young person, I use LinkedIn, I think, in a different way than other people would who are already in the industry. So definitely just being consistent with updating your network, regardless of whatever it is that you're doing, even if it's the smallest thing. I think that all adds up to your personality and adds up to who you are. And when they look at you at holistically with everything that you've updated on these social media platforms, they can see a lot and extract a lot from your social media persona, I guess.
Take us back to your very first post, Tanvi.
Oh, okay, I don't even remember, but
and why you started.
Yeah, I credit this newsletter idea to the Knowledge Society, TKS, which is a program that I joined a year and a half back. They really encouraged me to start. So I can talk about my first newsletter, which absolutely sucked, and just how I didn't really have much to talk about, and wasn't really transparent with my experiences that month. But I think over a couple of months, I got more intentional with what I wanted to share in that newsletter. So even if I didn't do anything crazy that month, I just sort of brain dumped insights or new learnings and mindsets that I was trying to train. So even just little other aspects of your personality in life, if you're sharing that, it's also enough to help others gauge who you are as a person. And then obviously it's a great idea to share your professional projects and experiences as well. So I think over time you get more comfortable sharing your personality on social media, specifically LinkedIn. And I think I credit a lot of the traction I got from these newsletters compared to the other posts that I've also been consistent with on LinkedIn.
That's fantastic. So taking the leap of faith in a way, and I love, Tanvi, that you've shared that it wasn't perfect to start with, and it's not about perfection. It's about getting your story out there and practicing. Caelen, how about you? We've got 5 minutes. So people, one last question we could do after Caelen's given his response, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, sounds good. I'll keep it short. I think I would have to agree and reiterate what Tanvi said, in that it does take a lot of practice, and I think a lot of it is just telling people what you're interested in and making sure that you're communicating that well. Personally, I want to get better at keeping my community updated with what I'm doing. Sometimes I think I get too involved in projects that sometimes it becomes an afterthought, when really it should be one of the top priorities. Because one of my mentors likes to say basically that, you can do all the best research in the world, it can be the greatest project in the world, but if you don't tell anybody about it, it's basically useless, because no one will be able to use it, no one will be able to know that it exists. And so that's something I tell myself quite often to help practice posting on LinkedIn, help get people involved with what I'm doing. It's like Tanvi said, that is the best way to get people on your team and be able to move forward in your projects, in your career.
That's the transformative power of networking and connecting, isn't it? You've said it right there, that being able to share the work that you're doing is critical to being able to advance that work and to accelerate that work, to get it out into the world. And I think the combination of what you both said is to do that and to not be too stressed about being perfect. It's more important to have a shot at it, to have a go at it. I've got a question here for Caelen. So we've just got a couple of minutes. So if you could give 1 minute on this one. Someone who knows you, Goodness Mampashi, who's been following you, I think, and this is a great example of why LinkedIn's really valuable. Could you say a little bit about your mandate for young mining professionals and plans for collaborations in Africa? So just a really snappy response.
Yeah, so we've been really excited. There's a fantastic organization called Afromine. It's run by a great gentleman who goes by Toby. And they're doing a lot of work connecting young mining professionals in Africa, across the continent, connecting them to good resources to advance their education, advance their careers. Honestly, I get a lot of inspiration from that group and from Toby, because they're doing absolutely phenomenal work. And so in the future, I would really love to see our organizations work together more. And so an example of that is we're trying to build a project where we have students like from African universities come study at US universities and vice versa. So basically international exchange for mining students, as well as a similar program with that for like internships with African companies and American companies. We're not, that's a new project, so I don't know when that will happen, but that's what's in the pipeline for us.
Fantastic. So people connect to Caelen on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you'll be able to follow the progress of that. So we've had an absolutely wonderful conversation with Tanvi and Caelen, learned a lot about their experiences with networking and connecting. And we've spoken about the wonderful examples of Tanvi's work at school, and also her amazing connections that she's already been building internationally through her experiences in Switzerland. And I think the message is you too can do that. If you're a school student and you want to experience and learn from other people around the world, you too can do that. So Tanvi, do you have one last thing you would like to say? And then I'll ask Caelen, and then we have to close.
I think, Wendy, you wrapped it up pretty well, but just to young people, I think if you do start, you're definitely at an advantage. You're already one step forward. So just knowing that simply trying and like practicing from now will really benefit you in the long run. So if that's all it takes, I really recommend that you go ahead and explore and just set your foot into the world and see what doors open up as a result.
Thank you. That's a wonderful message. Caelen, last insight from you, and people out there, join Young Mining Professionals. What a wonderful organization. Caelen?
Yes, please join Young Mining Professionals. But I'll leave with I think it's an overstated quote, but I think about it a lot in terms of networking. And it's a Michael Jordan quote that I think everyone knows. And that's every shot you don't take, you miss. And I think within networking, that's the essence of it. Every conversation you don't have is a missed opportunity, right? And so I would just encourage everyone to keep that in mind, have some self-confidence, even though it can be very, very hard, and just practice and practice and practice.
Thank you so much. And thank you to our wonderful audience, and especially to Raziel and the LIAMforum for hosting our conversation. It's been a delight to meet you both and to hear your perspectives. Thank you so much.